Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church in Eugene. From wherever you are in the world, in here, out there, it's good to see you today. Zoom friends, I hope you'll share where and how you are in the chat this morning. My name is Poppy Lockridge. I'm accustomed to she and her pronouns, and I am a middle-aged white woman wearing a sleeveless blue jumpsuit today and a chalice necklace. We call this room a sanctuary from the French for a sacred place, and before that from the Latin sanctus, holy. A sanctuary is a place of safety, given that meaning through the regard that all are equal in the eyes of the Most Holy. In that light, before we kindle our chalice, I ask you to turn to your neighbor, maybe look them in the eye, who is here as you are here, and say to them, "May you be well. I'm glad you are here." Glad you are here. Aria will light the chalice for us while I read these words from Craig Rowland. We light this chalice for the ones who arrive disheveled, carrying questions, contradictions, grief half-healed, and dreams still raw. You deserve a place that welcomes your becoming, that knows your fire is not too much. Your silence is not too little. A place that sees your shadows and still reaches for your light. You deserve a community that listens when you speak your truth, that sits with you in turmoil, that rises with you in joy, that believes in your voice even when it trembles. You deserve a circle that brings you hope and coffee and poetry, a place to rest, a place to rise. Let this flame be that place, not perfect, but possible, not without cracks, but full of light. Welcome home.
Good Sunday morning, everyone. I'm the Reverend Jen Youngsun Rue. I use she, her pronouns. Today I'm wearing my black preaching dress with a green stole over it. Not perfect, but possible. Not without cracks, but full of light. This is the beloved community. This is the community that we strive to create every single time that we are together. We live in a sometimes ugly world. We live in a world where there is light. There is light and there is dark in this world. Right? There is beauty and there is ugliness. We live in a world where stories of sexual abuse, harassment, and violence are far too common. We live in a world where these stories are some that we rarely speak about in a setting like this, in a Sunday worship service. Maybe we're afraid that we're going to say something wrong. Maybe we're afraid that we might reopen painful wounds. Maybe we're afraid of just making each other uncomfortable. These are understandable fears today, but silence speaks loudly as well. Our silence can tell survivors that their stories are too difficult to bear, that their pain should remain private and hidden, that some parts of our lives do not belong in the walls of this sanctuary. Today, we choose another way. We gather to make room for the truth to be spoken and to be received with care. We gather to listen without turning away, to affirm the dignity and the bodily autonomy of every single person. As we gather to practice becoming a community where those who have experienced sexual violence do not have to carry their stories alone, we have created a care plan for all of us. This worship service may bring up some strong memories. It may bring up some strong feelings. And so we have with us members of our pastoral care team. Will you please rise if you're here in the room today? Thank you so much for being here. This is our pastoral care team. They're available for empathetic listening throughout the service and afterwards. So please find them. Also, Assistant Minister Eli Poor is here, and they will be looking out for anyone who needs some extra support during the service, so they'll be watching. And as always, room 1, next to the chapel back there, is our low stimulation room. It's a place to be away from the crowd, but still be able to participate in community. And then finally, immediately after the service, Aria and I will host a small care circle in my office, which is across this hallway right here. This is also open to Zoom. We encourage anyone and everyone to just make the choices that are good for you today. Make the choices that care for your body and your spirit today. Come, let us open our hearts to the song of life, singing for us and for the flourishing of all. Come, let us worship together. Come, all who are weary, carrying heavy burdens. Come to the deep well of your own soul, and you shall find rest. Come, all who are joyful, buoyed by gratitude for life itself. Let your joy overflow the container of your own heart and be a blessing to others. As you are moved, you're welcome to place a stone in water or write your joys or sorrows on the cards on the table there. Zoom friends, please use chat to share your joys and sorrows with each other. Not the simple resistance of a pillow whose foam returns over and over to the same shape, but the sinuous tenacity of a tree, finding the light newly blocked on one side, it turns in another. A blind intelligence true, but out of such persistence arose turtles and rivers, mitochondria, figs. All this resonance, unretractable earth. The poetry of Jane Hirshfield. We hold in loving embrace those who are in transition, those who are mourning losses, those who are recovering, healing, and those experiencing the turbulence of the seasons of life. May this community be a place of true sanctuary for all who seek refuge. May we find comfort and rest in this resonance, unretractable earth. May it be so, my friends. Blessed be. Amen.
Hi everyone, I'm Aria. Some of you know me as Ari. I have short brown hair. I'm wearing a multicolored dress today. I'm very nervous, but it's lovely to look out and see all of your friendly faces. When I was a child, I did not want to live. That is, I did not want to live the life that I was living, and I could not imagine any other life than that. Like so many children, I was convinced that the abuse happened because I was dirty or born bad, or because something about me was inherently shameful. Like so many children, I learned to hide who I really was because something about me seemed to inspire violence in my parents, and particularly in my father. I assumed this was just how everybody else lived. I was wrong. I give my mother some credit because she taught me to love books, to love storytelling, to escape into fantasy. While I would not recommend that anybody live their entire life this way, this capacity saved my life. I could read for hours without moving, and that was a safe way to still physically inhabit the real world, but to psychologically be miles away. This was also a way to start to educate myself about the realities of my world, all from a safe distance. When I was still very much just a child, I read the book A Child called It. I cried for an hour because I felt so seen. I felt like that book was about me. It didn't really seem so odd then that a book about a child whose father locked him in a closet for hours, starved him, and beat him would feel comforting to me. After all, my parents fed me 3 meals a day, I always had new clothing, and outwardly I seemed okay. I was caught in the double bind that so many children get caught up in. If you give any outward indication about what is happening to you behind closed doors, then you are in danger from the people who are hurting you. If you don't give any indication, however, then even generally good people will assume you're just fine. In retrospect, it's still hard for me to believe that absolutely no one had any idea, and I'm not so sure that's actually true. I had every symptom of being a survivor of child sexual abuse. I would get sick with stomach aches with no obvious cause. I withdrew and became shyer the older I got, and I hated being touched, especially by men. I never had a boyfriend or even made the slightest move towards dating. In other words, I acted very much like the traumatized child that I was, in spite of pretending so hard to be otherwise. If anyone had looked just a little closer, they would have seen what was really happening to me. I think part of the problem is my dad also seemed just fine. He hid his own childhood traumas behind a professional face at work, and he only screamed at my mother or me and my little sister in private. My mother, who was 100 pounds soaking wet and had no family to speak of, was entirely at his mercy. We all were. But because he so carefully hid his violence behind the closed doors of the nuclear family unit, none of our neighbors or family friends saw what he was really like. Behind closed doors, my father was a monster. Out in public, he was the perfect, sensitive, liberal family man, and no one knew. No one knew, too, that I would try so hard to keep myself awake each night to prevent the abuse from happening, that I blamed myself entirely, that I assumed it was my fault because he said so and because no one ever told me otherwise. I was lucky, privileged, crafty, blessed enough to survive. I made it out alive, and over time, I learned to share my story, first through personal narratives that I shared with my beloved friends, then through spoken word poetry, and finally through public speaking. I am speaking for every survivor that I know is listening. I am speaking to folks who have not yet reconciled what happened to you. I'm speaking for folks who want to better understand how to support the loved ones in your lives, but mostly I'm speaking up for myself, for my little self who is still listening for someone to tell them that they are not to blame. I have the key to that particular cage, but I'm still gaining the confidence, clarity, and self-compassion to use it. In sharing my story, I walk in the shadow of giants. Incredible people, from Maya Angelou to Mary Oliver, have come before me and lit the pathway forward. These women have taught me over time that I, too, can thrive in the afterwards of the worst things to ever happen to me. They have taught me that I can still build a life that has meaning, a life that matters to someone beyond myself. That is a powerful lesson. That lesson, those stories, they showed me a different way to be. One of the things that I have learned from these women, and in particular from Black feminist liberation theology, is this: what happens to one of us lives in the psyches of us all. We are all haunted by these stories of violence, whether we acknowledge it or not. Children who experience violence and hardship grow up into adults, and these adults will either become healers or the sources of harm. I believe that it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that adult survivors have access to the resources and care they need to ensure their own histories of violence become blessings that inspire, motivate, and create kindness, rather than histories that repeat endlessly in present traumas. It is important to me to say that the way that the society treats child sexual abuse is, we tend to have an endless compassion for children with this experience, but once that child hits adolescence and then adulthood, that compassion turns to blame. We start to ask questions like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you trying harder to heal? Why are you still angry or still hurting after all these years? We tend to turn our backs. I consider myself an ambassador for all those adult survivors who never had access to the resources that I did, who were not granted years in their early 20s during which to read books about trauma, to sleep and to heal, to all those survivors still caught up in cycles of harm doing because they don't know how to stop. It is important to me to point out that this is a shadow every one of us creates, and this is a shadow side of our society that we are all responsible for changing. I see child sexual abuse as one of the curses of Western civilization. It is a curse that must be broken again and again by every survivor if we are to heal our society. I believe that, given the right conditions, this is more than possible. I believe this future dream of healing and transformation is inevitable. I am asking for your help to achieve that dream. Speak out about the Epstein files. Keep your eyes and hearts open when a child comes to you and tells you that something is wrong or something bad happened to them. Be or become someone who is a trustworthy adult for the children in your life to confide in. Be or become someone who is a trustworthy adult for the adults in your life to confide in. Treat child sexual abuse like the societal problem it is, rather than an individual problem that can be solved through individual actions. Learn as much as you can about consent and implement those ideas into your daily lives. I believe that in this we are fighting a war for our very souls. Sometimes fighting can look an awful lot like healing, like empathic listening, like validation, like telling someone that they are not alone in their struggle to survive their own history. I believe and I know that every one of us has a role to play in changing the story of a society in which sexual violence is commonplace, normalized, and shamed, to a society where sexual violence is unheard of and beyond comprehension. That is the world I'm doing my best to bring into being. Won't you please join me? Thank you. So next we wanted to invite you into a pair share with a person next to you. We have a few questions prepared, but we basically just wanted to invite you to check in, share, if you're okay, what your reaction is, and something that you're going to do today to take care of yourself. Thank you.
And of course for Aria, for opening your heart and sharing yourself with us and inviting us to open our hearts too. Thank you so much for today. Let's say our closing words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now may your heart be comforted, knowing that you are not alone and that your story is sacred. May you find the courage and grace to act with justice. May your wisdom guide your prayers and your labors. Amen. Blessed be. Go in peace, my friends. Go in love.